Thank you for listening to this podcast from KX 93.5. We invite you to tune in for more great music and talk on our grassroots nonprofit radio station here in Laguna Beach, California. No matter where you are in the world, you can listen to our station at kx935.com or on our smartphone apps. Right now, here's Awakening Code Radio from KX 93.5.
We have Jason and Heather Powers. They collectively are known as the Powers of Love. They do a lot of work kind of helping people move through relationships, and that's why you're here. This week is Valentine's Day week. It's 2 days away. And we thought, let's just keep it in the theme of love, talking about relationships, talking about moving through, talking about giving tools to people that are working through stuff. We're in high energy times. I mean, there's a lot of happening, a lot of stuff hitting many fans at all the same time. People really working through some volatility in their relationship. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
All right, we're slap happy on this pre-Valentine's show, and I'm really excited to dive in to really get an understanding of what you two have really perfected, I would say, your message. After knowing both of you as single individuals and being on the path with you as you fine-tune this this alchemical process of loving each other. And I really want our listeners to get the same feeling that I get about what you're learning about each other, about sacred relationship, and I would call it a new paradigm, a new way of being in relationship that differs from what I've seen in relationships of the past. So I would love for you two to dive in and expound upon that. What is the powers of love?
I'll let you start, baby.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's always good to be with family. And this is, though some may say it's a Hallmark-made holiday, it's every day is a good day to celebrate the most incredible force in the universe, which is love. And it's such a misunderstood word that can be used and abused in different ways. And but it is the essence of everything that is. And so the powers of love, is really it's multi-dimensional, but it's at the same time it's very simple. That love is the back of everything, and that we do our best to eradicate the barriers to give and receive more in increasing measure. Because that's really, at the end of Moulin Rouge, which I love, it's really, what is the meaning of life? To love and be loved, And as human beings, we're in this earth school learning how to receive love and trust love and know that it's safe to love and be loved. And so that's the essence of what we call evolutionary union, of really balancing the powers of love. It's a lot of work of balancing the masculine, feminine warring that goes on, that's been going on for a long, long time. And so it's simple, but it's at the same time, it is an alchemical experience.
Yeah, it definitely is. I just felt compelled to look up a verse that we often refer back to. We both, as you guys know, come out of a very fundamental Christian background.
I did too.
You did? Mm-hmm. I don't think I remember that. Wow.
And moved through Science of Mind and still adhere to New Thought more than not. But no, I went to Seventh-day Adventist elementary school and played in, recently, not all that long ago, played music, in the worship team at Rock Harbor Church, one of these junior mega churches.
Totally.
And, so.
Oh my gosh.
Part of my journey.
So awesome. Well, I think we all have that. It's the Rose Christ background in one way or another. And I think one of the things that we find over and over again is that we have glamorized love so much in our culture, especially in the West, because of movies and music, that we have, love is a feeling, and it's something that we can get. We often barter and exchange love in relationships, and we're not really in the business of just giving love unconditionally. And so we have an idea of love that's false, and we always kind of refer back to this 1 Corinthians passage, and it just says love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth. It always protects. It always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love, real true love, never ever fails.
And that will take you a lifetime to do that. That's the word. That's the powers of love right there in a nutshell, as to how do we help and guide that, because the work that we've been doing is that very thing, is perfecting that process of being, I mean, just trust. I mean, just alone, just to trust that love is safe. Most of us have been, we've been hurt, we've been betrayed, we've been hurt by the powers to be. Our first powers, our parents. That's where a lot of us learned what love is or isn't. And so we take that into our relationships, and we have a process of just going through that, And I would add, we actually spoke this at Star Knowledge Conference a couple years back, that there's a quote about you. If you could have the knowledge of the Akash, in a sense, if you could speak languages of light, you have faith that can move mountains, you have the deep gnosis and understanding of the mysteries of the quantum reality, but you have not love. You're just a resounding gong. And so love is that force that's going to heal the world. It's what's bring us together. It's what's going to unite us. Years ago, when I understood what the power of one love consciousness is, truly believing that that's what's going to unite us. And so when the alchemical process is that fire. We often joke and say our second address is the cauldron. We live in the fire. And one of us may squirrel out of there and try to squirm out of there when it gets uncomfortable, but that fire, that holy fire, is what has purified all the lead, the density out of our four lower bodies, if we can go to that place of clearing out all that is not love.
The distortions that we carry around love.
Yeah.
That is very well put. I like the way that you worded that, and I know you have a song around that. Are you planning on singing that song tonight? I mean, later when you're going to sing, but don't you have a song about white fire or something like that?
Yes.
You weren't thinking of singing that song?
No, but we were. It's really funny because that song was in our On This Day memories of being at
with Laura.
an event with Laura Avatasamali and
oh my gosh.
and Daniel
Isn't that when
Ramos,
it was
Chief
birthed?
Daniel Ramos.
It was birthed during that time.
It was.
Yeah.
This calls to sacred activism. Yeah, we had 56 days in a row of, and you were a part of that with us, where we gathered together luminaries and artists and leaders and activists, and we all came together for one purpose, to know the truth together, to know that these issues that we are dealing with in the physical realm, that there is a cause that we can come back to and really seek the divine for solutions that are not of this world, that will actually help us shift what we're experiencing in this material realm.
Very powerful. Simply putting it, the power of prayer.
The power of prayer.
That is,
and intent and group coming together in the group dynamic and
And we've probably all heard that Bible verse, the Corinthians. It's almost the most new thoughty woo verse in the Bible, because it's so broad and universal, and it's so tempered.
Right.
It's just a voice of love. That was written by Paul. Paul to letters to the Corinthians.
That's right. Yeah.
And
see, he's proving. He knows
brother,
his Bible.
brother.
Most of the New Testament is Paul.
Yeah.
So you just move through these, and we've all heard that. I mean, that's a very common thing that people read at their weddings of what love is, and it's such a fresh, modern sounding take on all the things that love is. It's just let's pare it down to its simplicity, and here's the things that it always is. You can talk about Jesus' expression of his love, and sometimes that's challenging. It's like, how often do you forgive? How often is if it's the right answer, you stick to the right answer. You don't say, well, I have a tolerance level, I can stick with love or forgiveness for a while, but eventually somebody does something, I gotta, usually I'm a very loving person, but what you just did, blah, blah, blah.
There's always somebody that tips you off.
Triggers you. And, this idea that the right answer is always the right answer, and love is always the right answer. And when we were talking about, just as we were starting the conversation, some people, you say love is the force of the universe. And you go, all right, now you're not just in woo, you're in double woo here when you say, why would you say love is the force behind the universe? And I think there is actually a logical expression of that, they can even invite physics into it, because now physicists like Nassim Haramein or even Manas Kafatos, who writes a lot of spirit science books, respected physicists, say that there is consciousness. The background field of all physics is a consciousness geometric grid of awareness of itself. Well, if you're aware of yourself, like humans are, we are the only sentient beings that we know of. We can assume that dolphins are sentient and aware, and whales and other animals by what they exhibit behaviors, but we know we are sentient and aware. What is the thing virtually universally true about the human experience? We do want to love, we want to share love, and we want to receive love. So if you're the universe that is conscious and aware of itself, choosing any spread of emotions that you want to choose, it's a logical thing to express. I would want to experience love, and I created this whole thing in love so I could receive it back into myself. So it actually makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, when we say, oh, the love is the background of all things, or love created everything, is like, oh boy, here we go. You know, but we're getting closer to marrying a true, if you say the background field of everything is awareness of itself, consciousness, love, it has to be a part of that.
Right. You know, it's so funny. I love the way that you just said that, because it's
did you channel that?
That was like,
I think I did.
Put that on quote, because the science of love is so, you know, I love where spirit and science are saying the same thing, where the masculine and feminine voices, where I would say spirit and science are coming together in beautiful harmony. But I often joke, because I could not ever say something like that. And I often joke, like, I may not be a smart man, but I sure know what love is.
But
and
you are
all
a
that
smart
matters.
man.
I am a smart man. I've got some wisdom, but it's really at the simple thing. Are you choosing love? Are you choosing fear? And relationship, we're coming into the new economy, the new currency is love. It's not going to be some intelligent technological thing that's going to advance our planet. It's going to be a greater expression of love, because that's what's going to bring us to a sharing, caring economy. It's what's going to bring us to a cohesive unit, and it's going to be partnership economy, where we're going to learn how to love and be loved in greater capacity. So I really know that when Heather and I came together, what we're about to step into was beyond our little dreams, was beyond our wildest imaginings. But we know that we are here to help, not just to give it out, but to really anchor it, because we are the microcosm of this macrocosm. And as we do this work internally, as our beloved Michelle has said, I mean, you've watched this happen.
Yep.
It has exponentially grown as we continue to stay in the holy fire.
It's really finding a balance too, because a lot of times I think in the spiritual communities, there's a lot of love, like you said. There's a lot of kind of, let's feel the love. Let's kind of look away from all the other stuff that we don't want to deal with, and let's just create a feeling of love. And that doesn't move things forward in evolution. What does is creating balance, where intelligence and love are married together, and they become, because love without intelligence and without that power is insipid, it's weak, it's flaccid, it doesn't do anything. And intelligence without that love, that softer receptive side, is harsh and abrasive, and it often, you know, it tears down rather than builds up. And so finding that balance, that's when we come together in union, we're able to really learn how to love and to choose love when it's not easy to choose love. Love is so powerful because it will break down anything that is not like itself.
Yeah.
I'm taking that in. I'm just breathing that.
Everybody
yes.
take a breath.
Well,
Of course, I'm like
right
you,
here.
Jason. I couldn't have said it like that.
Gosh.
I'm just, you're on fire. This is
love
good.
her.
Yes.
and then
I love
doing,
her too.
you know, if we
I
move
love you.
through, we talk about the chakra system a lot on this. Some people call that a woo thing, but there's 7 primary chakras moving up from the root at the tailbone, going through sacral chakra, and so, you know, up through the solar plexus heart. And I've done energy work now for 25 years, and I'm usually talking as I do it. Sometimes a person is just zoned out and eyes are closed, might be snoring, but I continue to talk. And you get up to the heart, and it's like, isn't it incredible that if you tap into your heart space, there is a part of you that just says, I love. It doesn't matter what you put in front of it. Your mind says, well, I usually love, but that person really wronged me. Or how can I love this? Or it's so terrible. What blah, 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 story. If you just put yours, whatever it is, condition, person, experience in front of your heart, it just says, well, I love. So whatever you're going to put in front of me, cancer, My answer is I love that. That troubling person, I love that. The loss of a friend, a life, I love that. That's all the heart knows how to do. If you want to tap into your heart space, that's what you're going to hear. It's up to the rest of you to incorporate that through the entire rest of your being. But it's a miracle that we have something like an intelligence, a heart space intelligence that says, I can love that. I can love anything. I mean, it's like a love machine. That's really what it is.
They say the longest journey is from the head to the heart. And so often, a lot of times when we go on our spiritual journey, we first become aware of something greater happening, and it's usually our mind that's beginning to understand things. And while our heart is beginning to open, because a lot of times the guard is so thick around our heart, but we go into this kind of this pink fluffy cloud stage, we call it, and we're gaining a greater awareness that there's something bigger going on. And that stage kind of gives way to the body's invitation. The body is wanting to relax into this new awareness. And so the filter that it goes through from our mental field down into our heart, where the rest of our body can come into that relaxation, and that same information, that love, that feeling of it's okay, it's safe, is really what the work is. And it's one by one taking on those things that are in opposition to what love feels like in our body, and fearlessly looking at it so that we can relax, like you said, Eric, into that space in our heart, and allow our heart to be the gateway that our whole body can be in unification with our mind.
Absolutely. I just had an honor of talking with a really top theoretical mathematician last night, both a physicist and 6 hours with this theoretical mathematician. I couldn't imagine something I thought was going to be so boring. But the first thing he said was something about the smart. I'm convinced that the smartest part of us does not reside in the brain. It's between the gut and the heart. And that is not crazy to say anymore, because both the heart and the internal organs have neurotransmitters, have brain cells, what we would call brain structure in there. So there is like a primary sense of what these emotions are living in other parts of ourselves. And, you know, when we talk about the heart's desire or a broken heart, or, you know, when you feel punched in the stomach because something, there really is an intelligence there that is reacting first. Wow. Before your mind has a sense. Greg Braden talks about this a lot, heart math and
Heart Math Institute.
Yes, yeah, right. This is getting down to the science of what these emotions really are, but it's really brain. There's thought going on in these other organs that we never would have thought before. And this physicist, this theoretical, mathematician last night, thought that is really where we're leading from. Most people are leading from that space. We just don't know it.
Right. That's amazing. And that's what's leading us into emotional intelligence,
right.
Because...
Did you listen to our show last week?
No.
It was all about emotional intelligence.
Well, look at
that was the show.
That's hilarious.
Emotional
We're gonna have to
intelligence
get into that.
and interpersonal skills. And I was sitting here thinking about how much of that is coming through in this show with what you're sharing.
And we work a lot with, we've got a dear friend, Sandy Hoover. Shout out to Sandy, and Feely the Bug. She's got a whole kids movement called the Bluminous World about helping kids tap into this emotional field. Iman and Rowan, who's been working with Feel.org and 6 Seconds and Heart Math Institute with what they're doing with just really understanding that the emotional field, which stems from what you're saying, the solar plexus and the heart, those areas that, we need a lot of healing around. And so that's the essence of our work. It's really to help heal all that is the armor around the heart and to awaken love. I saw something from Paramahamsa Yogananda on his mausoleum that it said, his quote is, "Oh Lord, help me to awaken your love in the hearts of all." That's what he was laid to rest, written in gold. And I'm like, that's exactly what we're doing.
I'm loving the powers of love. One of the things that I think you're doing, the powers of love, as a team, as a unit, as two whole and complete, working on yourselves and your own sovereignty, coming together in union and doing this thing called evolutionary union or partnership. One of the things that Heather said to me, and I love the way that you said this on the phone with me, we were talking sister to sister, and you were saying that one of the things that you're doing with this process is awakening love, true love. It's true love alchemy, and burning away that old stuff and that turning it lead into gold, which is alchemy. So I'm curious how you get to that place. Well, how do you get to that place of surrender when you're in something like what Eric was just talking about, when Eric's saying when we're having a moment, when it's not all roses and everything's so great, la, 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 la. But when you're in the trenches, I think our listeners really, really appreciate us giving and having people on the show that give those tools that help them reflect on, wow, I relate to that. Very relatable. Mm-hmm. So are you doing that? You must be doing that in your coaching practice because it's meat, mm-hmm. right? It's good. It's good. Mm-hmm. It's something good that you're both working on together.
It's practical. It really is practical. We come with practical tools, practical wisdom, and we talk about, I came up with the acronym of RAW. We had a show called at Mondays at 11:11 was Raw and Real with the Powers of Love. And raw is real, authentic, and whole. And I think the whole part is the essential piece that the ultimate, what we're talking about, here's Valentines, we're looking for that love, and maybe we want to shower our love with some specialness, but really at the end of the day, this is about the beloved union within yourself. This is to bring that forth and if you're out there, listener, and you're looking for that love, you've got to go within, and when the fires get lit, and when things have gotten tough, and we're in an impasse, and we have impasses. This isn't all pretty roses all the time. This is work, and all the buttons get triggered, and we're perfectly triggered. We're perfectly aligned to trigger each other perfectly to see where love is not having its way. But when we get in the thick of it, what happens is we have to go to the garden. And that's the sacred garden. That garden, we call it the garden. It's the prayer place. It's the place of coming to unit. They say in the cord of three cannot be easily broken. That band, that bond that you have with the God of your understanding, the universe, whatever you want to call that source of love itself, is what's pulled us through in the years that we've been together. When it's been bleak, we didn't know how we were going to do it. Mm-hmm. We just agreed, let's just go to prayer. And that's an essential piece that I want to share with the listeners, because this isn't about bringing that other in. The success of our union has been because of the prayer mat.
Mm-hmm. The prayer mat.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Like Jason said, I think a lot of times in relationship, people they're looking, especially where twin flames are concerned, a lot of the mythos around, these divine partnerships, thinking that somehow that partnership is going to complete you, or it's going to take you to a higher elevated spiritual journey than you already have. And a lot of what we feel so called to do is to kind of bust through some of those myths and make it more practical. And one of those things is, excuse me, got something going on here. When we are in the midst of whatever it is that's coming up between us, for us to take a moment to go, first of all, know that if we're triggered, it's something that's going on inside of us. Mm-hmm. If we are looking to the other person and we're saying, I feel this way, or I behave this way because you behave this way, it's never, ever going to get solved. The only way to really get down to balancing a relationship is to understand that the person standing in front of you is only a mirror so that you can see where you are not allowing love to have its way. And, goes back to this choosing love thing. When we come into partnership, when anybody does, and this applies to relationships that aren't even necessarily beloved relationships, but friendships that trigger us, family members that trigger us. What love does is it stands in the midst of the heat and is able to open its ears and see and hear something that wants to speak, that is not necessarily just what's going on in the conversation. The other person is always trying to reveal more love. They're asking for love. Mm-hmm. When we get into our place where we're feeling, needy or whatever, there's always a cry for love. There's always either giving love or a cry for love. And we find for us, when we are at an impasse, it's usually because we've been talking too much. Mm-hmm. And we need to take whatever this problem is that we're having and take it to a higher source so that the answer, the solution can come in that's higher than either one of our opinions.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the prayer mat. You know, and prayer is whatever language you choose to do it. There's no right or wrong way to pray, but this is the success of this relationship, you guys, is based on a relationship with the source of love itself. Because the Course in Miracles, one of our favorite books, talks about there's only one problem and there's only one solution to everything. The one problem is you feel separate from the source of love itself. And the only solution is to connect to the source, the at-one-ment, the atonement, to the source of love. We call it many names. The name is not important. But that relationship, we talk about courting the beloved. Ishkala mabulela. That's an old Sufi quote, that I am love, I am the lover, and I am the beloved. And when you have that relationship at the core of your being, now you're not coming from a deficit. Now you're not looking to get something from somebody else. Now you are so overflowing that you're now extending it. You're now giving it. And by the measure you give is the measure you receive. And so now you've changed it. You know, it talks about in the Bible. We quote it a lot, but it's because it's our background. But to repent, to change direction. And that changing direction in relationship, stop looking to get something, to barter and exchange. If you say I'm sorry, then I'll say I'm sorry. If you forgive, then I'll forgive. If you give, then I will give. If you choose to repent, go the different direction and give, you will be amazed. Give as a couple. Go serve together. Go do something. You know, we talk about navel gazing. When we're in our trouble, we're navel gazing. You're not listening to me. I want to be heard. That's my wound.
Thank you. I'm so glad you admitted that. That's nice.
No, if we're going to have that, I can talk about all my wounds, but that's not what we're here about. You know, this has been...
No, but it's relatable.
Yeah.
Many people probably will say, wow, that's one of my wounds too. And,
Well, we're
and it's
talking
relatable.
about a huge social condition going on. If we're talking about old paradigms, when we think of a romantic movie, you know, we're looking at the other to save us. The knight that rides up on the white horse, and song lyrics. You complete me. I am nothing without
Hallmark cards.
You're the best part of me. All those disempowering things. You are laying this on somebody else's shoulders. Here's another person trying to make it in the world themselves, and all of a sudden, they're not feeling love from you. They're feeling things like, I got to complete them. They're nothing without me. I mean, when you really run that through the processors, like, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of responsibility on me. When you guys both said it very eloquently, the marriage is to yourself first. And it's not in a weird way. It's just divining in a divine way, mating up your masculine, feminine aspects where you are whole and complete, feeling love, nurturing love, able to, you know, the cup is full, so it can spill out. Love doesn't spill out of an empty cup.
It's very inviting when you see that. The self-confidence is there.
Sure.
You don't feel that needy, graspy, please, I need this from you.
And that's a physics term. That's resonance, is that you're the tuning fork. You're vibrating. Now, what the vibration is love. Another person has that same tuning fork.
Sympathetic,
It's sympathetic. It will ignite that in them.
Yes.
That's what resonance is. That's a physics term as well as a music term. But the resonance of Nassim Harriman. I only say it a million times a day. Harriman and the Resonance Project is because it's so critical in the realm of physics of what you start is going to echo out, and there's something waiting for that. So just think of that. The way you ignite love in somebody else is you being it, and it just ignites their tuning fork.
They call that the it factor.
There you go.
When you got somebody's got it. They have it. I don't know what it is, but it is a radiant magnetic center of love.
I'm having such a deja vu moment right now. I feel like we've had this conversation
Probably have.
before. Yeah.
Kitchen.
Wow.
Well, see you later, everybody.
You know, when we come together, one of the things that's important, I feel like for us to share, is that when we came together, there was so much synchronicity. There was so much confirmation to such a deep level that we were being brought together for something greater than just our happiness and our, small life. And we knew that going in. And if we didn't know that going in, we would have never survived the fires. Because what happens is, it's really easy to grow spiritually on your own. It's really easy to be at peace and in harmony on your own. But when you get into relationship and you're carrying the entire universe of this other person along now with yours, with all of the confusion and baggage and maya and distortions that each of you carry, you begin to walk into a labyrinth of mirrors together.
Yeah.
And this is why going back to the prayer, because a lot of times we often tell people, you're not in trouble, you're in transition. When you walk forward and you say yes to a divine partnership, you're saying yes to something. It's the other thing that we say, we closed the back door knowing that we were on a journey to serve God, to serve Mother Earth, to serve something bigger than us. This was not just about us serving ourselves or each other.
Yeah.
And the way that this works is that now the fires are intensified because it's magnified when you come together. And to stay there is one of the most courageous things you can do. And I think in our spiritual communities, we're kind of infiltrated by the outside influence that if it feels too hot, run. And we certainly don't advocate if somebody's being abused or, if there's something really drastic going on, to stay. But we also see that there's a lot of people that run way too quickly, and it's still based on a barter and exchange. And don't try and do it alone. We don't get a manual on how to be married. We don't get a manual on how to be a parent. And it takes a village to raise a relationship. It takes a village to raise children. And that is the passion that we are carrying forth, because this world needs relationships that are solid, that are devoted to wholeness and purity, and raising families with values that support communities and life that are life-giving. So,
Oh, it's so beautifully said.
You are modeling this quote that we're all talking about. You are being the change we wish to see on earth. And the only way that we are going to step into this and turn the ship around, so to speak, is to go through these fires, to do this internal work, and to come together in all of our relationships. I like that you even said it doesn't always have to just be marriage. I can't remember who said it tonight. I think it was Heather. Yeah. It doesn't have to just be marriage. It can be with, I hear a lot of times people talking about their family of origin is triggering them, especially when you come into this awakening process that many of our listeners found this particular podcast because they were searching or seeking and saying, oh my gosh, what happened to me? Something's happening to me. I'm changing, and my family doesn't understand me. And now I feel like I have to let go of my family to stand in this new truth that we're all finding this in our awakening process. And it could be something different for everybody. It doesn't mean we all go through it the same, and it doesn't mean we all have the same experiences. It's yours. It's ours. We can own our own truth and our own process. And it doesn't mean that your family members are wrong or that you have to leave your family behind. I know, Heather, you went through some fires with all of that. Not only did you have this relationship dynamic going on, but in both of you, I think, because you came from very Christian base, for lack of a better term, you came from a fundamentalist background, is how you've put it to me. And a lot of the people in your circle didn't understand when you had this awakening process and thought you were getting involved in a cult, or you became the devil, or you switched teams, you're on the other side. And I love to witness you and see that you held everybody in a space of love and grace, and just hoped, I think, that they would get you at some point, that it would turn around. You're starting to cry, aren't you? I know.
It has. We just spent Christmas with them. And
I know.
It's a miracle. And she has, and even with her own children, because she was, there's a heroine in the Bible. Her name is Esther. And Heather is that Esther that had stepped away from a paradigm and always knew that her family would eventually, she would be the first to blaze a path, that her parents, her beloved parents who served in ministry together, and they are divine union, and they're in the other realms around us, supporting what we're here to do as ministers of love in a new way, in an evolutionary way. But the family has come together as she's held that steady place of peace, of love, that it's not saying
consistently this whole time. I've witnessed this. I mean, you come to my house on Thanksgiving and we love this. And I feel like as your sister, Heather, and we're not biological sisters, but we're certainly spirit sisters and eternal heart sisters. And I've been holding this with you for so long because I know what it feels like to love so deeply and to have to surrender to that love and let it go and walk away for a little while. Because when you love something so much, if you set it free, we see what happens. If it truly was meant to be there, it will come back around. And how perfect timing that this show, that we're able to speak about it now. And I'm so elated to be able to say, you're on the other side. You held firmly in your faith and your love. You stayed and stood in the face of a lot of rage being showered upon you, and you just continued to shine. And now it's turned all around, and I got to meet your son at Thanksgiving time. He came to the house, and now to hear that more family members are coming around and realizing you're not a bad person. You're a beautiful, glorious beacon of love and light. And I'm so happy that we get to share the powers of love tonight on this show, pre-Valentines. Even though it's a Hallmark holiday, I still think that, yes, we love should be in our field every moment of every day. And I know that I get all mushy when it comes to speaking about matters of the heart and love, and like a broken record with that. But there is something about a lot of people really giving into that Hallmark moment of celebrating love on a specific day.
Yeah, well, there could be lots worse things to celebrate, even if it's a Hallmark holiday, than love.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I want to share this quote. We all have heard this before, but it's something that stays with me. And it was a wise man once said, when the powers of love overcome the love of power, peace will be restored on earth. And that's Jimi Hendrix, who I was in my mama's tomb, her womb.
Oh,
dear God, Mom, I love you. You're still alive.
I think you're going to make a song out of that at some point.
My mama's
tomb.
No, but that's important. And so it's an important topic. So thank you for
And I heard a very touching quote today. If you love someone, set them free. And if they come back, it's because no one else wanted them and set them free again.
But that's
I did read that today.
Oh my gosh.
That's hilarious.
Eric, that is such an Eric thing to say.
Well, we have a gift because Heather has gotten her guitar, and I think that's the first exposure I ever had to you, Heather, was you playing your guitar. It was probably a party at Michelle's house, and I'm like, who is this person?
Actually, it was when I was music director here. I introduced her music.
Oh, is that
this
what?
radio
Oh,
station.
was it a CD or something?
Stands corrected.
There you go. All right, you win, Jason.
It was because I dreamed of this beautiful. When I was 11-year-old, I dreamed of a blue-eyed, blonde-haired woman singing lullabies to me. That was my wife. And here, funny thing is Heather has a song called Lullaby.
Oh.
And it was on this radio station. Introduced her, Kiana Luna, and Elijah Ray one night, and it was.
I do remember that. I was here that night.
Elijah Ray with his dragon. So tell us about what you're going to sing.
Well, before I do, one thing I just wanted to add to, I'm overwhelmed by just this moment, and just thank you guys so much for just going on this journey, being on this journey. We're all witnessing each other rising. But for whoever's listening, and we'd never ever want to give the idea that we're above or have any more corner on the market of love than anybody else. We both have had such a journey of going through the mud. And, when I left my world, I had really torn life apart. I was in an immense amount of pain and was not able to function in that fundamental realm, and had really struggled with it for a long time. And I had self-medicated my world. I had a lot of incongruity. I had a lot of things that were out of integrity. And when my awakening began, the biggest thing that I had to do was face myself, which is what we all have to do. And I just want to, I say that because we all have pockets of things that we are afraid are so horrific that nobody will ever understand, and that's outside of the scope of love. And we're here to tell you that there's nothing outside of the scope of love. There is nothing in our lives that cannot be reconciled, restored, and resurrected by the power of love.
Amen. So, let's real quick move the mic away from your guitar a little bit.
This one?
Yeah, just away from the sound hole, just a little bit, because I can facing it, but further distant, like that.
All right.
Yeah, and let me hear that a little bit. Yeah, that sounds good.
Funky tuning. This song is Grace. You want to tell them about it?
Oh my gosh. Well, without going too far into it, it's just, I just want to say that in this union, in this love, I've experienced grace to unbelievable ways. And grace comes when you surrender to the powers of love. Grace is manifest. Mm-hmm. And this love truly is grace manifest.
You got me smiling.
I can't stop laughing.
You got me dancing.
I'm happy to be singing again.
You got me dreaming.
Pure love light streaming.
My body's feeling like warm honey dripping over me. It's taking a while for me to trust. Resistance always crumbles in the face of one true love. This love is grace, 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 grace. This love is safe, 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 safe. Within this love I've been rearranged. This love is nothing but amazing grace. You've got me moving.
No need for proving.
It's good to be choosing
A life of peace and happiness.
let go of worry.
No need to hurry.
Now is the moment.
It's all unfolding perfectly.
It's taking a while for me to trust. Resistance always crumbles in the face of one true love. This love is grace, 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 grace. This love is safe, 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 safe. Within this love I've been rearranged. This love is nothing but amazing grace.
How sweet that sound.
Amazing grace, amazing grace, amazing, amazing, amazing grace. This love is grace, 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 grace. This love is safe, 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 safe. Within this love I've been rearranged. This love is nothing but amazing grace, 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 grace. This love is safe, 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 safe. Within this love I've been rearranged. This love is nothing but amazing. Nothing but amazing. Nothing but amazing grace.
How sweet that sound. It's amazing.
Amazing grace. Amazing grace. Amazing, amazing, amazing grace.
Just surrender to it.
Wow. So good. Oh my gosh. And Jason, you sound great. I've heard you sing on some of them, but I love the fill-ins around it.
Thank
That
you,
sounded
brother.
so good. And Heather, your voice is as beautiful as ever. I mean, if listener, if you've not heard Heather sing before, I'm sure you're just going, wow, there's some real talent in the studio. Really, really just a delight. You know, let's take a second for station identification. We'll be right back in just a couple of seconds.
Williamson, and you're listening to Awakening Code Radio.
Yeah, that was Marianne Williamson. And of all things, she's running for president. Right. She's made it official that she is going to run. And I don't know if she's, there's a lot of strategy that goes on in politics, whether she's really thinking, I know I'm going to win or I have a chance, or maybe she's just going, there's not a vote for somebody else. Who knows?
She had a hard time becoming, going, oh.
Yeah, on the mic. You're just talking.
Oh my gosh! I know the on-air sign doesn't come on, so it kind of got me off. It got me off. I didn't think we were on air either. And then Eric's talking away, and I'm thinking, "Oh shoot, we're on air."
Yeah,
I wonder why that is.
We hold that place that she's going to invoke a ripple in the water.
Well, she's going to start a conversation. I mean, her very first thing out of the box, and she's just like, "Listen." Without it turning into a religious conversation, we have to have a moral compass.
Yes.
I mean, right out. I mean, you may as well just say, I know I'm not going to win this talking about this, but it is an incredibly important conversation to have across our country, is we have to have a moral compass. That's what this country was founded on. I mean, even if it was flawed logic, all men are created equal. One, we've got only the word men and created equal. And we know at the same time, all those founding fathers had slaves. But ideologically, we know where they wanted to be, it more grounded than where they came from.
Totally. You know what's so amazing about Marianne, and we've kind of gone back and forth a little bit in our conversation of, is she up to the challenge? Because this is like a big deal. But what I love about how she's been communicating as a strong spiritual leader is that it's very clear that she is not attached at all to the outcome of this. Her desire is to bring a conversation, a raising the bar of the conversation, and to bring new ideas to the table. And I think she's also incredibly excited to see who else is going to bring really wonderful ideas and to stimulate something higher than we've had as far as the people that are entrenched in two parties that are attached to the outcome.
Yeah. Well, I don't follow politics much, but who's the woman, the Hispanic woman that's, just really kicking up the dust in Washington? She did a Senate hearing and something, and she goes, I just want to make it clear how this all works, almost as if it's a new idea. Maybe Michelle or Colleen will know who we're talking about. Colleen, tell Michelle who it is, so I'm not talking out of my hat. Like, she's just sitting there in front of a committee saying, so if I'm a lobbyist and I have raised billions of dollars for my election, that's fine, right? Yes, that's fine. She asks around the room, certain people. And then once I'm in power, it's okay for me to address legislation targeting that particular business. Like if a pharmaceutical company paid me all this money to run, and now I'm running and making laws that I can make laws that favor that pharmaceutical company. Yes, you can. And she goes, is there not something really broken about that system?
Yeah.
And you can see it on the faces that, like, it's just so obvious, but it doesn't get talked about. It's like, hey, this is the way we do it around here, so why don't you just shut up? Yeah. That has to change. I've always looked at lobbying as just like, in any other terms, that's called bribery. You paid somebody to vote your way. You can call it whitewashing, call it lobbying all you want, but if you're throwing money at it, I would call it some sort of in verbiage, a form of bribery.
Yeah, it's a political class. It's really...
We don't usually go down the political rabbit hole here, but since you did kind of put us on the spot and you did call out her name.
Got a C in there.
It is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
There you go. Yes, Cortez.
To check that out.
Colleen was right on top of that, and she sent it over. I couldn't remember her name either. But I didn't want to go down the political rabbit hole too far, because that's not really what our show's about.
And I'm not endorsing anybody.
But I will say that Marianne Williamson will be at Conscious Life Expo.
And I think it's divinely perfect, because she wrote a book called Return to Love.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's really what her message has been for so long, is to return to the powers of love. That's what we call, because we believe that part of our journey will be in what we call divine God government. That divine government, that's government for the people, really for the people. And how that looks and what that looks, we have no idea. But we do care. It was just we're not contending with the old system. We're focusing on building the new system that is built on partnership and the new currency. And so we know that Marianne's going to drive that conversation. So
That's a Buckminster Fullerism, and
Yes,
he's
sir.
a hero of mine. Is like, you don't fight the old system,
Yes.
you create a new system that makes the old system obsolete. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's important for us to know, as you know, it's just as important for us to have an idea of what our history is, all the way back to as long as we can cellularly remember, right? These are ways that moving forward, we know what the pitfalls are to avoid. And I think some of us, you know, I was involved in conservative politics for a while, and just to know and to understand the mindset of certain people. And when you've been freed from that mindset and you now can see it from a different perspective, I think it is a responsibility of ours to learn how to speak a language that bridges between the two. And that language is love. That's why the families can come back.
Will
That's
you run
why.
so I can vote for you?
Well, and that's, you know, the big wild card in all this
You're amazing.
is social media.
Yeah.
You know, we are seeing a rallying device. We're seeing it in France, even though mainstream media is not really covering, but we're seeing it through social media, what is going on in these countries. And as long, like you said, it's in our it's in our DNA, it's our memory. You go back 6,000 years. I'm constantly talking about Samaria and everything else. You're talking about the first taxation as we know it. It's a small bunch of people governing many. And that might work fine if everybody's got the same goals and heart in mind, but usually that's not the case. When the few are running the many, you're going to have a lot of disparity. The few want to be rich. They don't care if the many are poor. But then at some point, the many just says, wait, we're the many. We should not be ruled by the few. And that's what's happening all over the world. And we are, I think, going to see a sea change in how all of this takes place, is that the many are going to understand their power and do things collectively. And social media, as long as the internet is up and running, is going to allow this collective voice, and people are just going to go, screw this, you know, whatever it is. We're not talking about
I like what
one
Karen,
instrument.
I like very much what Heather is bringing up. It sounded like I was going to say Karen, and
Yes, it did.
I wasn't going to say Karen.
You said
I don't
Karen.
know.
Karen
I
there?
know.
Carrot Top? Were you going to say Carrot Top?
There was going to be a different word in there, and it came out all jumbled. I don't know what was going on, but I know your name is not Karen. I know it is Heather, and I don't even know a Karen. Anyway, what Heather was saying about being the bridge, I think, is vitally important right now, is that we learn to speak to each other and hear each other, whether we agree or not, because it's not serving us to be this divided. And holding so firmly to our need to be right that we can't see through that. And the powers of love, I believe, are the way through. I do want to take one moment, because I did say that Terry Ann Dill was listening, and I do want to say I found her message, and one of the things she said was really, really sweet. She said, I will be listening to this podcast over and over again because there's so much information and different energy dimensions coming through while listening to everyone's conversation. And then she gives you credit, Heather, that you're expressing love very eloquently. And she said that she's in complete awe because she was stunned that her grandson, Liam's first words were literally, I love. I love. Wow. Those were his first words. And she goes on to talk about her grandson. It's very sweet, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But then she says she found this show when Liam was first born.
Oh, wow.
So here he was born, and then his first words were, I love, and we're talking about I love. So she did say a lot of really nice things, and thank you so much for that,
Thank
Terry
you,
Ann. We really
Terry
appreciate
Ann.
you writing in. And
You know, I just want to say the awakening code. You know, when I remember, you know, I've got 1111 tattooed on my thumbs here. You can't see that, listener, but it's because of the 1111 that I met Eric and we met Michelle, and it's been this whole dance of seeing this. But people always ask, well, what does the 1111 mean? And truthfully, simply, it just means to awaken to the powers of love within you, that you are nothing but that. You are the presence and power and intelligence of love itself. And so hearing that from Terry is just a beautiful demonstration, you know, that out of the babes, you know, we return to the innocence of a child, that love is all we're wanting.
Sure.
You know?
It's universal.
It
I mean,
is.
it really is. If you want to, I always sort of, I wouldn't call it taking the side of a devil's advocate, but I am always thinking of a skeptical. I come from a sort of a skeptical framework in many of the things we talk about on the show. And I can hear people just going, oh, love this, and everybody wants that, and love runs the universe and everything else. But you can break it down in a way that is digestible. And one happenstance or of a way of expressing this is you give a bunch of people the same bunch of words: love, hate, healthy, sick, joyful, angry, forgiving, hateful. And you just let them choose which one would you like to be and which one would you like to be, want to be less of. 99% of the world's population are going to pick the same words and say, this is the field I would like to be in: love, healthy, happy, forgiving, joyful, abundant, all those things. And the low vibrational words: sick, angry, unforgiving, spiteful, judgmental. I don't want to be those things. Right. If there's something that universally true, it's speaking about the essence of what we are. And idealistically, we follow the leaders, the spiritual guidance counselors of the Jesus, Gandhi's, Martin Luther King's, Buddha, that are teaching a lesson of love. And we idealistically hold it up. It's been a challenge for us to act on it. Yeah. Our trust kind of goes out. And we think, well, this is the real world now. It's dog eat dog out here. And I got to make sure, looking out for number one, everything else. How am I going to love your way through that? You incorporate your ideology into your action plan. That's about as simple as it is, because that's truly what we want to be. While I've got the mic on myself, I want to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole in talking about something. So we're in a spiritual community. I think a lot of us would say we want to identify that
let me go push that button.
Yeah, we're in a woo community a little bit. We're in spirit. We're driven by wanting to raise consciousness, awakening, whatnot. It's a spirit quest that we're on. That can play out very unevenly in a relationship. Yeah. And that's a big part that we move through. I moved through it myself. Most of my friends in one way or another have moved through it. We get married at a certain age. You're both tracking a certain way. You're buying into the American dream, or you're buying into the same spirituality even. You're both of the same ilk. And then one person is tracking one way and the other person is either tracking another way or not tracking any way at all or something like that. That becomes, I think, a real issue in the spiritual community to talk about. And I can't say that I necessarily navigated that as best as it could possibly happen. But, I know that it's something that almost carte blanche happens in those communities.
Well, when I met you two, I was just in the middle of a divorce. I went through a divorce, the mother of my son, and it was that very thing. We were, you could feel like the shift started happening, and we go to therapy, went for therapists, and we went through it, and it was just that to this day, we're Team Jet, you know what I mean? I can sit there and say on the other side of things.
Jet's your son.
Jet's my son, yeah. And holding that space to allow things to dissolve gracefully without having the resentments and all that stuff. That takes a great power of love to hold that place, to let it dissolve and to reshift how you're seeing it. But that to stay in something that's not working is not what we're saying. You don't close that door and put padded armor on and go at it. It's just about letting, seasons and reasons. There's times where things need to dissolve. And we work with couples on that, and how do you consciously dissolve something and to know that it's okay if it's time to shift that. But
well, rather than the dissolvement, I'd like to hear encouraging words of how you keep that framework of how you keep it together when there's two different tracks happening.
Okay, so it's so important to have both, because when, like we were talking about earlier, a lot of times in the conscious world, people give up really easily because there's this part of our spiritual journey that becomes, Richard Rudd talks about it being narcissistic. It's part of us discovering ourself, our higher self. We kind of sometimes go into a pseudo-God complex or a Christ complex where we think that we're the only one awakening to these truths in the world. And so when you have that in a relationship and you're kind of tracking at different levels, and you're not consciously choosing to have practices together or to take time together or read the same things together or share things that will allow you to grow in the same direction, it can really easily go off the rails. And one of the things that we really encourage couples is to find time every single week or a couple times that's very specifically devoted to developing a spiritual practice together. It's important to have it on our own, but to have something where you're learning the same things, you're able to talk about the same things, because it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but when you have a framework of conversation that you can have together that stimulates each other into greater versions of yourself, this is what allows a relationship to flourish and grow. You want each other to have sovereignty, but you have to make time for it, and it's very easy to let that time go by, just like it's very easy also to like not take the time for ourselves. You know, life keeps us doing a lot of things, and a lot of times we let the spiritual practice, we let those small things of self-love that demonstrate love to the other, we don't see them as important in the moment. They're the first things that get swept aside because everything and everyone else becomes more important. But you have to choose to keep finding something to grow together in, and I promise it will take on a life of its own that you don't expect if you choose to do that.
I think the other thing is a little bit of willingness. It talks about like if the two couples, if you're both willing to do the work together, it doesn't, if it's, sometimes it gets to the place where it's just too much water under the bridge, and that's only you know that.
Right.
But if both parties have a little bit of willingness to do something together, to work at it, and I think the most important thing is to reframe, to, you know, just ask your own self, your higher self, to see this person differently. Mm-hmm. Tell yourself a new story. We talk a lot about this year, you know, something we've been saying a lot is like a new story. Cherish each other, a new story. Allow them to show up differently, because a lot of times we have all the past conditionings and all the things of who we think they are. We really don't see each other in whole. We only see fractals and parts of each other. And a lot of times, and we do a lot of this work, is shadow work. There's a lot of shadow projections going on. And so it's really, how can you move through all the veils of who you think they are to come in and allow them to show up, allow each other to show up differently. And if you allow that, have that little willingness to show up differently, and as Heather says, have that spiritual practice, it doesn't have to be some, you know, religious thing, but it's about doing something, whether gardening or serving or doing something together, reading a book together or doing something like that. So
Michael Beckwith talks about a good marriage. This is interesting bringing this up, but a good marriage is often based on a series of divorces, constantly being willing to divorce the old versions of ourselves, because when we're in a conscious partnership, the guarantee is that you're going to constantly be finding new parts of yourself. And sometimes those new parts of ourselves are unexpected. Sometimes they go in a direction that we weren't anticipating. You know, we delve into the deeper places of our consciousness, and a lot of times those places, those caves, are where our sexual distortions are where our deepest fears are, where our resentments towards our mothers and our fathers that are playing out in karmic loops. And if we're not willing to constantly take each moment, each day as something new, we're going to keep overlaying that relationship and saddle it with something that doesn't allow it to birth into something new. And so a lot of times what we end up doing with couples, it's almost like a midwifing, helping them to learn how to help each other birth a new version of themselves without attaching to any of it along the way.
How to get out of the loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, our program used to be, before it was Awakening Love, it was called Karma to Dharma. You know, for getting out of those karmic loops that we find ourselves in the same arguments, or maybe you're in the same relationship, just different suit.
Yeah.
You find yourself attracting the same kind of people. There are certain things you need to do. When you talk about the energy systems, you need to clear out. You know, a lot of ours are in the communities that we're seeing is the 4 lower bodies they talk about, the primal sexual desire. And we talked about when Heather and I came together, we knew we were here to help clear within ourselves the distortions around sex, money, and power. Now that is, you know, that's the essence of why things dissolve, why things are out of whack in our world, and coming into balancing sex, money, and power, bringing sex into its divine, sacred sexual sharing, and restoring the belief that money is not evil. Money is a source of love. It's just God in action, and restoring the balance of powers between the masculine and feminine, yielding for the men to yield to your beloved, yield to her, support her, be that guardian, and allow her to rise, you know. But then our sisters, see
And
the
to
men.
celebrate her rising.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I need to say this to our sisters. There's a lot of distortion. And the men, I grew up hating being a man because I didn't understand why this mistreatment of the feminine. It didn't make sense, maybe that's because I'm from another star system that came here to restore something that was different. But there is a healing masculine rising that are true guardians of Gaia. They're true guardians of the feminine quality within themselves. And for you sisters to see your beloved, to call that forth, to call that out of them, it will be you'll be amazed if we're both calling the holier self, the higher self of each other.
And that's just loving each other. Really, breaking it down to something really, really simple is Gary, I think Gary Smalley has the 5 love languages. And a lot of times we each speak a different love language, and so we often end up communicating to our other in the love language that we want to be communicated in. And it's not necessarily how they receive it or hear it.
Right.
And
We talked about that last week on the show,
Are you
5
kidding?
languages of love. Yeah. And I think John asked me which one I was, and Dr. Seema Diaz said she's the same as me. And did you hear that part, Eric?
No.
You were
He
asleep.
was sleeping.
I was
He
sleeping.
was taking his NyQuil
I got
or something. Yeah. But
So
I think
important.
that book is a game changer.
Oh, it is.
That book is
undoubtedly.
definitely a game changer. I definitely have my
So
story
what was your
around
love
that book.
language?
My primary love language is words of affirmation.
Mine too.
Mine too.
Yeah.
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 It's not neediness.
Yours is touch.
I'm the only touch here.
She's
Well,
touch.
that would be my second. But
Yeah.
words of affirmation, I don't think of as neediness. A lot of people will filter that and hear, oh,
Yeah.
you need this. You got to hear that. You got to be the star. You got to be, are you just empty? No, an affirmation is something that you already know, but that it brings you joy
Yes.
that somebody else sees it and recognizes
Absolutely.
it. And
It feels
is-
good to be appreciated.
And feels good to be
Yes.
appreciated.
Well,
They-
and it's out of the overflow of the mouth, the heart speaks.
right.
Right.
Or
And
the
so when you
backwards.
know, out of the overflow of
the
the
heart.
heart, the mouth speaks. There you go. Thank
Right.
you.
I like
and so
that.
when you know, for somebody like that, with our love language, we know when somebody's speaking words of love, we know where their heart's at.
They're full.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. That can't come through unless they're full themselves. And that gives you a lot to rest in. That takes the onus off of you being responsible for that other person's happiness. When someone expresses, it's like, well, they must be full that they can affirm me. They
Yeah.
can express that. And it takes a big load off of, whew, they're not making me responsible for their happiness, assuredness, safety, no fear, whatever they're expressing. If they can express that much love to me, it must mean they've done the work and they're filling themselves up first.
It's so fun when you can come together and be joyful and playful instead of have that drama twist or that
Totally.
loop playing out.
Well, we're winding down. We've got about our last 15 minutes. I want to make sure that we hear one more song from you. Maybe just play us out. So we've got about 10 minutes left.
Well,
Anything we have not talked about when we talk about relationships, love? We've done a bunch of shows on the twin flame aspect, and people, we're not hearing as much about that.
What do you
Yeah.
think about that term? Because
I'm
I
so
still
glad
have,
you asked.
I still have people saying, I met my twin flame, and I think, oh,
Every time
journey.
we hear that, I think we both cringe because, again, there's 7.5 upwards billion ways to experience the divine. None of us are on the same journey. There are those of us who have come to maybe overlapping ideas of what that is, and we've had similar experiences, so we have kind of a camaraderie in our experiences. But the twin flame thing, every time we come across it, more often than not, it's like it's suffering. There is this feeling of not completeness. Somebody is like looking for their twin flame. And then if it's not the twin flame, it's the twin ray. And kind of all of these, versions of this. And the bottom line is our beloved, our twin flame is ourself.
Twin is within.
Ourself. And when it's, it's whole and you have that vision of it within, it will manifest without. It will demonstrate in your outer world.
And I think just to add on to that is just, I love what the Tao Te Ching says in the beginning of the Tao Te Ching, this ancient Asian, text, spiritual text, that the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. to call this, this is a twin flame union. Is it? Yes. Is it not? No. I mean, we could name it, but to name it is to limit it, to try to define it. And I think there's twin flame physics, and there's things that go into the science of a sacred alchemical union. But, and we do work with fire. We work with the fire. We work with violet flame. We work with these alchemical light tools. That's a big part of the success of our union, is we do blaze up our auric, the etheric fields, and work with that fire. And so, we're one in heart. And so you could look at us and go, well, they're twin flames. Obviously, we are these flames of God working and serving all life. But it's not, I think there's a trap it's a paradox of sorts, that when you're looking for your twin, that it is a trap that you are thinking that you are incomplete. That there's something about you that's lacking. Until you find your twin, you can't really be of service into the highest way you can. And so that I think is the trap of all that. And so we don't call ourselves twin flames. We don't talk about that kind of stuff. We just talk about the practical. The stuff that we bring is really practical. We're very esoteric in what we do on our private, but we're not here to bring esoteric science to this. This is a really simple, practical way. We talk about in our Awakening Love program, there's 6 gateways, and we're building the 7th, which is the alchemical gateway. But there are, stuff, just trust and forgiveness. Working at, we live by a motto in our life, is to love only, forgive everything, and remember who you are. And when we do that in our relationship, when we're choosing to love only, and we forgive everything quickly, and truly
instant
remember
forgiveness.
Yeah,
yes,
radical forgiveness.
Yes.
That means
there's a book called Radical Forgiveness. Yeah.
And it kind of goes back a little bit. Here we bring Jesus up again. What would Jesus do? But I always heard, or would prefer to hear that. What would love do?
Yes.
And that it comes up very quickly.
Yeah.
None of this is rocket science.
Right.
You are in
No.
a heated debate. And you just take a minute, because we talk about the reactive mind, the reflective mind. The reactive mind just says, if they hurt me, I'm going to hurt them back. It's the law of that was the law of Hammurabi. That seemed like the most just. Somebody wronged you,
Right.
you have the right to wrong them back, to create the balance. Then we have mystics that come along, Jesus being one of them, that just says, no, that's not the way it's going to work. You love because love is the right answer. Love is
Yes.
the right thing to do. So your reflective mind can at least grasp if you say, what would love do right now? You're having an argument and you're starting to get into the hurtful aspect. You're name calling. You're going to say some stuff that is now almost killing the person a little bit by little bit. When you are such a this and you always do that, you're kind of killing them a little, because those words don't go away.
Right.
You can pause, and instead of react, you can reflect and say, what would love say or do in this moment? You will not say those things.
Absolutely.
It's just, even if you have to not be you can say, what would love say? Love would say, right now, I don't have the right words. Right now, maybe we should just stop, because I do love you. And we have a lot of this, whatever. But you can hear the voice of what love would say in a strong voice, not a weak voice, not willy-nilly. It will stand in a place of strength and say, here's what love is saying through me right now, even if I'm not feeling it. And that changes a person. It becomes resonance again. The other person could drop their guard and say, well, you know what? I'm going to let love speak through me right now as well. And that's a much better place to leave something that two people just haven't battling out and trying to hurt each other's feelings.
Absolutely. Love will usually take you to a place of either going silent, not in retaliation, not like cold shoulder silence.
Right.
But in just like holding
Space
the
holding.
space,
Mhm.
really
Space holding
holding the
silence.
space and listening. And then it will often take you to a place where you have to say something that is something that your ego doesn't want you to say. Or acknowledge something
Like,
that your
maybe
ego
I'm
doesn't
wrong.
want you. Yeah, and
I didn't see it that way.
it is unbelievable that when we're willing to do that, what arises out of that, there's usually, there's your story, my story, and then there's something that arises out of two willing hearts that are willing to humble themselves before each other at the same time. You will see miracles in your relationship. And sometimes it's just a 9-second pause of being willing not to engage. That's self-mastery. And that's what a relationship is about. This is about learning how to master ourselves and to become masters of love in the process.
Oh, gosh, I love the way you language everything. It's so powerful and empowering to hear you stand in your truth like that and to share it from experience and really give us a visualization of what it looks like when you are standing in your truth and you are calling each other to your own self-mastery and witnessing each other doing it and being not being attached to who did it first or who did it better, who did it best, how many times you did it, keeping score, any of that stuff. You let all that stuff go away and you just really stand in your sovereignty. And witnessing your journey, like I said in the beginning of the show, has been a huge joy for me to see how you've been navigating this evolutionary union, as you call it, or evolutionary partnership, because I really do feel like what you're doing is holding the gate. You're creating a foundation for which new relationships can blossom and bloom. And I don't want to put anyone down for, any of my friends that have recently said, I found my twin flame.
Right.
I don't want to make anyone wrong for being on that twin flame journey. What I'm holding inside of me for anybody that says that to me, and what I'm holding as far as the space of love for anybody that's in this dynamic of thinking they're found their twin flame, I'm visualizing, wow, pretty soon they're going to realize the twin flame was within you all the time.
Yes, and that's all that we want to help people understand, is that it will always point people back to themselves, because that's where love resides. And I want to acknowledge my beloved. He caught me at a time when life had absolutely had every foundation possible taken out from underneath me, and I didn't even recognize the level of trauma and, I was in a season of life where I needed to be held by love, and his love, allowing God to love me through him, has been the single greatest gift. It really, truly has. And when we can learn to love each other like that, we can move mountains.
And in return, in honesty, this is the real raw deal. And there was a man inside that I always knew was there, to be a beacon of that. And it was because of this union that called forth. We call that out of each other, that if left to our own devices, I'd be an impure mess. We were talking about it this morning, that this unity of this union brought more purity. Because this unity is important. And so that's a whole nother conversation about bringing the pure love. I think what the world needs now is love, pure love. I call it pulo, purifying that love. And, because impurities are, and we've got so many distortions around that. So one of the things I want to mention, though, is it's something I think we talk about the gateway. We're holding this gateway. We find ourselves, Heather and I, bridge builders a lot of times. We work a lot with, we did an event with the Brahma Kumaris, I don't know if you were there, Michelle.
I was. Well, no, I wasn't at your big event.
At the Kodak. That's right. We saw you earlier.
We were at a Hashiman Wisdom Day. Same day. You knocked it out of the ballpark, hitting both of those events that day.
But it's the 11:11 in my opinion, in my observation, is when the gateway, right? You got two whole beings defining, they got their whole masculine, feminine presence. When that comes together, when two beings who are in their wholeness come together, there is a gateway of divine love. There's a gateway of awakening that happens when two beings come together. And I think couples that are coming together in sacred marriage, is going to do something so profound on this planet that it's quantum. It's quantum. I can't even define it, but the 11:11 gateway, I believe, is this sacred divine alchemical union.
Sounds good.
Beautiful.
Well, Heather, you're going to take us out. Thank you, both of us. It was a great conversation, important and perfectly timed for Valentine's
Thank you,
week.
both of us.
What?
Thank you, both of us, you said. That's the both of you inside you.
Did I? I was talking about the divine union within.
That's right.
Thank you.
He met his twin flame.
I'm turning everybody's mic off except mine and my twin flame. Thank both of you.
Thank you so much.
Both of us thank both of you.
Yeah, both of us thank both of you. I like that.
Both of us thank both of you.
There you
All
go.
four of us over here. I think all four of you.
All right, what are you going to play, Heather?
What a fun show.
I think I'm going to play Beloved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Heather Powers. And are you going to sing on this? No?
Silent.
All right. I'm turning all the rest of the mics off. Here we go. Thank you, listener. We'll see you next week with another great
Happy
show.
Valentine's Day.
Yes.
There was a time when I was reaching for you, and now I've realized your love that brought me to. Before my breath, I heard you singing over me. That the thought of you was cradled in this love for me. Beloved, you're my mind. Beloved, touch my soul. Beloved, now you have all of my heart. Everlasting love, where I am still and know. Everlasting love, I'm following you home. Everlasting love that's swallowing me whole. For now this garden as it comes into full bloom, and every angel you've appointed to rescue, join in the song and dance, caught up in this love, releasing heaven here. And now we hear you call from the heavens, call from the earth. Beloved, you're my mind. Beloved, touch my soul. Beloved, now you have all of my heart. Everlasting love, where I am still and know. Everlasting love, I'm following you home. Everlasting love, everlasting love, everlasting love that's swallowing me whole. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Sabaoth. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Sabaoth.